Before lunch, we have another interesting speech. Keith Griffin from Cisco System. He's in the office of the CTO. He is telling us about new video technologies defining the workspace of the future. And it's interesting to see what happens here. Your microphone works?
Yeah, I think so.
Great.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Great. Okay, so it's good to be back. We had the purpose of this was to repeat the keynote from last year's IMTC forum in Porto. So, given that there's new people here, it's somewhat of a repeat, but with some new topics in here as well. I also have a couple of problems with my presentation. One is that I'm between you and lunch, so that's never a good place to be. It could be worse. It could be between you and beer at the end of the day, but at least it's lunch. And the second problem I've got is that a lot of the content in here, the topics for discussion, have been covered already yesterday, today. So yes, last night I took stock of everything that was presented yesterday, and I narrowed it down to one topic, a little bit controversial, and thought, okay, I'll do that. And Badri has just presented that to you, so I don't know what I'm going to talk to you about. It was great to see. I mean, many of the points here are going to be related to that, as you see at the end. But before we get into it, I want to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane. So this was a 20-year view to last year. So looking back at 93, the types of tools that we might have used in our communication and collaboration lives. So you've got, from PDA to a video recorder, laptop, and so on. So how many people actually, as a show of hands, how many people would have used these back at the time? So, okay, all right, what choice did you have? So what's interesting about it is that that a lot also didn't exist back then. Like, we didn't have social media back at that point, which meant that we were forced back then to take a Polaroid camera, take photographs of our dinner, and then hand them out to all of our friends, rather than just posting it on Facebook. And what's happened since is smartphones have shown up. And they've got the capabilities of all of these things and more, and potentially, with higher quality and so on. So it's very, very clear that we're, the pace. It's not just that there's more technology there, but the rate that we're adopting that technology and the pace of innovation is definitely accelerating. And if you look at that, you can see the lines they're getting steeper near the end of the curve. Not entirely true, but for the most part. And an interesting one to look at that's relevant for our industry is the rise of the telephone. If you look at that over 100 years, a steady increase as phones and the infrastructure associated with them rises. And that's very interesting when you look at the discussion that we had yesterday from Pangu from Google. He talked about the 3 billion extra phones and so on, so I didn't want to go repeat that. But if you look at this just in the phone landscape, you've got landlines. You look at how rapidly the mobile phone and then the smartphone are being adopted. And if you were to take something non-telephone, but in the communication and in the collaboration space, like social media, imagine how vertical that line would be. I mean, it didn't exist before 2005, let's say, arguably. But imagine how, the key thing is that it's the smartphones and the web and various other things that enable that type of adoption. That's pretty clear. So, what does this mean? What does this mean if there are other drivers? So, the smartphone was driven by, or at least came from the mobile phone. The smartphone is video enabled. So when we brought video in, we were kind of adding it to devices we already had. But what if there was going to be an explosion of devices? What if there was something that wasn't just a +1 or +2? If it wasn't a like I'm bringing my phone or a tablet, or phone and tablet and laptop, what would that look like? And one technology that, I don't know if I should call it a technology, but one driver that could be like that is Internet of Things, or Internet of Everything. That's something that could really drive an explosion in the number of connected devices. So if we look back, 493, we look back to 284, there was 1,000 internet devices, according to this Telefonica report, with an expectation of, by 2020, 50 billion. And it's kind of interesting. You see this happening. We've seen it. We've seen this happen a lot. 2 years ago, I was at an analyst conference. The theme of the conference was BYOD. I set up for my demo at 7 a.m. I had a couple of devices around there. Everything was working. I went to the first session. I went back to my demo. Nothing was working. Couldn't figure out. Got the on-site IT people in. They took a look, and they said, "Oh, we're out of connections." Now, this was an analyst conference on BYOD, and they provisioned one device per person. Right? Everybody had at least three. It was a 500-person conference. They had something like 1,600 provisioned by the end of that when they realized what went wrong. So last year I was at the same conference, and I was joking with the IT guys beforehand to say, well, have we enough connections available to us this year? Is everything going to be good? So yeah, big laugh, everything was good. During the day, the network started crawling, really slow, especially at break times. So I went back and talked to him afterwards and said, well, so what is it this time? He said, well, we went back and we looked at everything. Everyone's using video. So they're an analyst company, but I guess they didn't see that coming either. But I didn't use their name. but so I can't wait for next year's event. I have no idea what it's going to be, an exercise in not seeing what's coming next. That's kind of interesting. So despite all of this, we still have a lot of things that are not yet connected. And a lot of what's driving this connectivity has just been our personal devices right now. But as we get into Internet of Things, there's a massive opportunity. And I would argue that despite all the numbers that float around, we actually don't know what it is. And I really like this quote when I came across it, because it's kind of likening it to the market for plastics in 1940. Would we have known that that would end up in everything? I think Internet of Things right now is in that same type of space. And the thing is that it's not just about devices. It's also about the information that those devices create. We heard Kerry talk about that earlier in terms of the amount of potential information that could be created just by wearables and by a person. But it's incredible the amount of information that can be created. And we'll also, I think, see the level and type of information go up the value chain. It's raw data right now. Soon it will be contextual and metadata that we'll start seeing being transmitted there as well. And it's interesting. Some of the statistics on this are interesting. I'm going to have to go to the notes for it because I can never remember these numbers. They didn't have numbers this big when I was in school. But IDC is projecting that by 2020, the digital universe will grow to reach 40 zettabytes, which is 40 trillion gigabytes of data, or 5,200 gigs per person. So that's a lot of information, an awful lot of information. And what we have to think about is, what does this mean for video? What does it mean for communication? Well, suddenly, if all of these sensors start providing this type of information, and what if they, not all of them obviously, but what if a lot of these sensors could be video enabled? Think of what happens in manufacturing environments. Think of cameras on machines, machines communicating with machines, machines communicating with people. It stacks up to be a really, really interesting opportunity. And I won't go into it again because Badri just covered it, but things like multi-stream and multi-party video suddenly, in the context of WebRTC or anything, suddenly take on a whole new meaning. We're not just talking about teleconferencing systems. It can go far beyond that. And I saw a very interesting project at MIT Media Lab last year where they deployed a bunch of sensors, various different environmental sensors, so location, temperature, you name it, audio and video. And they deployed them in a marsh. And it was really interesting because spatial audio is a big part of that. If you're going to be placed in the marsh, you want to be able to reference where those sounds were coming from. And it's part of, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it is the Tangible Media Lab in MIT Media Lab. So they have all of the sensors out there, and they take all of the input in. And I sat in Boston in the MIT Media Lab in a room which replicated the marsh. So if it was 100 degrees in the marsh, it was 100 degrees in the room. You know, they could you could replicate in theory wind flow and direction and so on. It was incredible to see it, and I'll just jump out to it here. Let me move this across so you guys can see it. Okay. Some audio here. This is, since last year, you can see the video in the background. They've also added a virtual reality, augmented and some augmented reality to this as well. Now I can actually move around here and navigate this. So what's kind of interesting is you can hear the direction of the audio change. If I was to go forward a bit, maybe back a bit, you can see things like the trees are moving. So I can sense, you know, and interpret that there is some wind there, and that's coming from an anemometer and whatever other wind sensors that they've got. And you know, you can navigate the entire area. So they've created this as an overlay. Now they hope to do this, I think, from initial conversations, using video, not just doing an animated mock-up, which would be pretty cool to do. And you know, I just really admire any research project I get involved with. I just admire the level of open thinking that comes with that, because like, who's really going to go out and solve that problem? You know, it's what we will learn from solving those problems that will inform the technology choices that we'll make, and that will drive the you know, the relevance and the problems we need to solve for video with Internet of Things. But it's really it's well worthwhile taking a look at that and maybe following up if you're interested. Let me get rid of that again. Okay, so if this works. All right, so back from the things we dream about and that we want to get to reality, back to video in the workplace. So it's changed a lot in recent years, and Ori talked about this yesterday in terms of, and used the Cisco VNI slide to show the level of traffic that's out there. We're past 50% video traffic right now on the internet, and expect that this will increase to 90%. And I mean, I see this on a daily basis, in even just with personal stuff. I go to Facebook and suddenly everything in the feed is a video that wants to play immediately, and that wasn't the case when I did this talk last year. So you see that level of video coming in everywhere. It's not just about real-time video. In Cisco, we say video is the new voice. It was interesting yesterday to hear in some of the sessions people talking about doing a video call per day, for example, and that was a big change. I mean, I live in video. Every single collaboration session, a meeting, one-on-one calls, they're all in video. There needs to be a reason as to why it's not video. I live in the west of Ireland. I can connect with the teams I work with in San Jose, in Seattle, everywhere in the world by video. And it's, I wouldn't be able to do what I do without it. And my desk looks like this. I don't have beautiful people in my office, but my desk looks like this. And the system I use at home is similar, but here's the big problem. And we just heard Badri talk about it. I can use that system, but I can't go call somebody unless they're deciding to use the same type. I can't, for example, call from Hangouts to FaceTime. I can't call my family when I travel unless we agree on a branded app on a branded device, and they use the same branded app and branded device from somebody else. So think back to the graph about how successful the telephone was. Well, we're not going to be successful, I would say, with video unless we start addressing interoperability a little bit more and making this work a little bit better so that I can call from really any device to any device. So we can focus a lot on standards, which is our you know, that's all of our responsibility. But really, we also have to work out ways of making these things work together a little better. And one of the things that can do that is WebRTC, and it's just one. And because like I said, I have no thunder left in the presentation, and Badri's done an excellent job just covering this. I'm not going to go into detail. So we all know what WebRTC is. This is the scenario that I was describing that I can't do. It's just a scenario, but I can't, just call from the web to an endpoint. Technically, of course, I can. I can make that work, and the standards exist, and of course, you can build that. But I mean, we just really need to work out the level of interoperability between all of the systems and vendors to make that happen. And those standards are happening primarily in the IETF and W3C. The codec debate was talked about yesterday and in the last session a little bit as well. One that hasn't been mentioned yet that I'm hoping to do some work on and get a draft together is on share, the ability to share your desktop or share an application like you would in an online collaboration session. So aligned with WebRTC, we should not just address audio and video, but also the ability to share. So that's something, if people are interested in, I would certainly call on anybody interested in that to come talk to me about it. It's an area that I think is very important. So to close out, now that lunch has arrived. So to build this next generation workspace, I think we all focus a lot on the physical aspect of video, whether it's a room system or soft clients, but also how we bring in sensor-based systems. I think is going to be absolutely critical. Video and how we go about this needs to be pervasive. It needs to be everywhere, and when it is everywhere, and it really is. I mean, the devices are enabled for this today, but we just have to make it interoperable. If we take anything else, or if you take anything else away from this session, it's the desire to make that happen. It's not just about codecs. It's about it's about following a model that can be as successful as the telephone, the landline was, with all of the benefits of mobile and everything else, but following that type of model for calling, for connecting, and so on. And then finally, an area I didn't talk a lot about is that this next generation workspace is going to have to be adaptive. Think about how the experience is different if we do video on, say, a smartphone versus on a room type of system, which is dedicated. So the user experience around the workspace has to be able to adapt to the different environments that it's in and offer the best possible user experience in each scenario. So that's really everything that I wanted to cover. But again, the key message or the key area that I want us to try focus on is interoperability and just seeing beyond things like codecs or whatever. The next thing is we'll have to agree, and we solve these one thing at a time, but we shouldn't lose sight of the overall direction where we want to go, and that's to have a fully interoperable video landscape. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions. I can certainly take them at lunch if you prefer to get straight to that. I'm not going anywhere, so that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much.